We need a new English working class. Why? Because if we are to reindustrialise and reinvigorate our exports to become a manufacturing country again, we need scientists, we need engineers, we need technicians, we need soldiers, nurses, and doctors to be the backbone of our society. We need an English working class that can get easy access to the university system, move up through education so that they can have large families and support themselves economically. We need people who will be the backbone and support of a social democracy. What do I mean by a social democracy? Well, I wrote a letter to the Labour Party on this subject in a response to Ed Miliband's speech, where he was talking about liberty and equality. I said, liberty and equality must be balanced or neither is achievable. So I agree with Ed Miliband on that. I've recently joined the Labour Party as a member. We need to make our society all-inclusive as it once was. David Cameron's big society is not all-inclusive, it is a Tory charade. We need a social market, this is what I mean by a social democracy, that produces to the point of maximum social benefit as part of an English and British social democracy. We need to regain the English working and middle class as our base of support and achieve a union with Europe. We need to have a federalised Britain with parliaments for each of the partnership countries as part of a European Union. We need a stronger, more inclusive and tolerant society that builds a stronger and fairer Britain. The central issue of our time is the lack of equal ability to borrow credit from the central banks by all individual citizens at the same rate as banks within the fractional reserve banking system. We have major social problems in this nation, such as the amount of housing wasted by unattainable surplus. Over 1 million houses are abandoned and left to rot. So how can we have a housing shortage? How can we have a homelessness problem? And how can an immigration where refugees are unable to be given sanctuary or housing? On immigration, I would like the party to adopt a 4% target for overall population for the whole of the EU from non-EU immigration. This must be 4% of the birth rate of Europe, so that the European birth rate rises year on year. Social welfare and housing for EU citizens, as in the Swedish model, must have priority. Within the EU, the lack of borders is an advantage, but outside the EU, the lack of borders is a disadvantage, as many nations have not achieved statehood with the corresponding legal institutions and are migrating into Europe. A similar situation is happening in southern Africa, where nations are being drawn towards South Africa. We must have flexibility on immigration, but we must not undermine our common European identity that holds the tolerant Western democratic world together. Immigration is part of our history, but our future must be more European and social democratic. I believe England should have a social market that produces to the point of maximum social benefit for all our citizens. The Labour Party is the only major party that is both social democratic and patriotic for England and wants to work within the European Union to bring peace and progressive prosperity to the world. In this sense, it is in line with my own opinions. I would like to be involved in the Labour Party to increase the balance between liberty and equality in England and the rest of Great Britain and Europe. All the best. So this is the second of my series on my open letters to the Labour Party. But is this true? Does Labour really represent the English working class anymore? And I sometimes struggle with this as a party member myself. I am a social democrat, but I am also an English nationalist, and I believe that the English people must be well treated as in part of what has become a multicultural society. Now, I believe that this is our nation, and that if people come to this nation, they should integrate into our culture. That's not a racialist point, because it is a point of trying to get an efficient, well-run society where everyone speaks English, everyone knows that the rights are for the many, that we have universal rights, not rights for minorities exclusively. We must have rights that cover the economic and natural rights. That is the right to be in a union, the right to life, liberty and the pursuit of happiness, the right to have a national minimum wage, also the right to a university education. I believe that is an economic right. It is not something that is a life choice. We need people in the university system to be trained, so to protect ourselves and expand our economy. Why do we need the university system to protect us? Because it is a very dangerous world full of global terrorism out there, and we need competent, able people, and we need the white heat of science to help us get off of oil, as I said in my last video on the deficit and versus university cuts. What is certain is that the English working class do not necessarily feel represented by the Labour Party. As I said in my video, Infocemp's English Social Democracy, I did not feel represented by the Labour Party, but I've changed my view slightly. I'm becoming more and more open to Ed Miliband as a leader in his views, and they correspond with mine in many ways. But I still want this to have, when people speak of the Swedish social model, the Swedish social democracy, people instantly know what they mean. They mean equality, liberty, the right, the people having a welfare system that actually works and provides people with welfare, provides people with maternity leave. We need if we're going to have credit, we need credit that is equally available to individuals as it is to the banking system. We need people to have responsibility for their own personal finances, to have gold as an investment and as a hedge, and silver as an investment and as a hedge. To understand economics is vital in a social democracy. When we get carried away and distracted by political correctness and multiculturalism, I do not believe that the Labour Party should be the party of authoritarian political correctness and multiculturalism. I believe that the Labour Party should be an economic party, a party that represents what social democracy is all about, and that is about equal wages and equal work. And let society, if we believe in society, sort out those other problems. And it will in time, because society is a natural way of dealing with problems. You cannot necessarily legislate every problem out of existence, but legislation is perhaps a start. We need rational plans to solve these problems, and that's why I believe that the Labour Party needs to get back to its roots, back to the English working class who started the Labour Party, and also the Welsh working class, of course, and back to the unions as well. I don't believe striking is in our interest, because it will harm the economy. What we need is a union with the European Union to make ourselves a much more powerful hyperpower and bring ourselves more in line with this. I disagree with the idea that we can have a deficit. Actually, David Cameron is right when he says that we must eliminate the deficit completely. I just disagree with the way he's doing it. I disagree with him profoundly on the way he's doing it, because we have a tax take of 1.2 to 1.7 trillion pounds a year, and we can afford to get rid of 150 billion pounds worth of deficit overnight if we needed to. We do not need to make cuts. We need an English social democracy. Thank you for listening. I YouTube, you decide.